So I thought today, Mel, we'd talk about something that has no interest for either of us, probably. And that is the subject of course, what is described as the beautiful game. Well, I don't find
Feminism.
it beautiful. And the
Feminism.
Yes, this time next week, I'll be Sheila. Not a chance. I like my dick and I'm keeping it. Thank you very much. So, yes, I thought we'd discuss, because it's obviously I have little interest in football. I think I only ever went to one football match. But you see, millions of people do love football, so we've got to indulge them. I only ever went to one football match, which was Leicester City versus Leeds, and it was in about 1968, and Leicester lost, as they so often did back then. Well, of course, Leicester lost. Leeds, wouldn't it? Leicester lost, as they so often did during the 70s, 80s and 90s, and, well, up until actually only a few years ago, let's be about right, they were rubbish. But, nevertheless, you know, the World Cup's on, and I even noticed that you'd made a comment on Facebook about the Japanese team, or throwing in a bit of support for it. Is that not so?
Yeah, because they beat Germany 2-1. What a result.
Well, there you go. So you've been following the football, or you were just sort of noting the result?
Noting that Germany got spanked and everyone likes to see Germany lose.
I can see you haven't really moved on from the rhetoric that has existed since the 1966 World Cup. Well, actually, since the end of the Second World War, let's be about right, where anything that involves a sporting contest with Germany brings out the same old nonsense from the same old nonsense newspapers.
Yeah, exactly. Doesn't matter what the context is. Germany lose, everyone's happy. That's that. Be it football, be it cricket, whatever it is, I don't care.
Yeah,
Germany getting a pasting every once in a while is a good thing.
Oh?
Germany getting a pasting is a good thing generally, so...
Well, this... Well, they've certainly had a pasting lately when it comes to energy, but there we go. You know, here we are. We're at the World Cup again, which I don't watch football. I happily admit I only ever went to that one match. I discovered that the shorts aren't nearly tight enough or short enough to hold my attention, but that's a subject for another day. But what do we make of this? You know, as soon as the World Cup starts, the English team, straight off with it. Football's coming home. I mean, we're not even in halfway through yet, and they're already in that delusional state that somehow we're going to bring home the trophy for the first time since 1966. Since I was a mere nipper, a mere glimmer in my mother's eye. Well, more than a glimmer, but there you go.
You're assuming that people aren't allowed to have some hope. There's a, even if it's slim, people like the idea that there's a chance, and we've got a chance. If you're in it, you've got a chance, and so you've got a chance to win. Slim as it may be, but if you're in the competition, there's a shot that you could make it all the way to the final. Is it likely? No, but it's there. I'd still rather have Japan win, but that's unlikely. But there you go.
Well, I have to say, I have I'm going to say, not much of an opinion on it all. Normally, I hope for Britain or England, the England team, to get knocked out earlier on, to save us the whole sort of furore of glory and disappointment that takes over every news channel that you can possibly imagine. while we look at a lot of drunk supporters and their dichotomy of why it all went wrong and ended up in the penalty shootout. Because it so invariably does. I can't watch it. I can't watch the game or any of the games just from that point of view of knowing that it could all end up after 3 or 4 weeks, 15 minutes worth of pot-shotting penalties at one another. And it's like, what was the point?
Well, that's all right. I mean, in Qatar, you can't have a drink anyway, so that sort of resolves that one issue, at least for the supporters in Qatar.
Well, they can if they go to certain fan zones, can't they? Which are just for posh people. Is that right?
Yeah, but you only get 4 drinks. There's a full
you only get 4
limit.
drinks.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. So you go up to the bar and say, "Can I have 4 gallons of red wine, please?"
And it's 4 plastic. It's 4 plastic half-liter plastic cups. That's what you get.
I mean, look, I was going to Grand Prix for God knows how long, at Formula One, loved it. Never considered having a drink once. I mean, what's the thing about needing a drink to watch a football match? Or is it because that's really underscoring my own opinion, the fact it's so fucking boring, you need something to take the edge off it?
Well, the whole point is that if someone says you're not allowed to have it, you want it even more. I understand that obviously there's cultural issues in there as well. You don't go to Saudi Arabia expecting to find a pub because it's not going to happen. But ultimately, you're going to a country where it's not allowed. Whether you like it or not, you have to follow the rules, don't you?
Yes.
Let's not talk about the hundreds of thousands of migrants that died in the process of building all of this infrastructure. And according to Qatar, it's 600.
Well, maybe they're not very good at maths, but it's 6,000 in terms of the entire. I think it's the entire country of migrant construction workers that have died since Qatar was announced as the hosts of the World Cup. So it's not 6,000 building the stadium.
It's all infrastructure.
Yes,
it's all infrastructure. It's a $200 billion investment.
Well, that's what I wanted to talk about today. Is less about the football, less about the so-called beautiful game, less about the delusion even that England could be coming home with the trophy. It's more about all the furore that's gone on over Qatar hosting the World Cup, and whether it's being a little bit hypocritical of us, of different people to kind of, don't get me wrong, I'm all for sticking it to the Qataris in terms of gay liberation and what have you. But at the same time, there does seem to be a fair bit of hypocrisy in it, because over the issue, if you like, that we're talking about, all these migrant workers that might have died in the country. How many workers die in this country on building sites every year? Through poor control. What's the kind
but it's not 6,000 over 5 years, though, is it?
Well, no.
Well then,
I dare say it isn't. Well,
the hypocrisy is more. I think that we shouldn't be pushing democracy.
Care homes to die.
Yeah, but we shouldn't trying to be pushing Western morality and democracy on Arabic countries, because obviously then you start going down the route of Iraq, in Qatar, in Syria, and many other Arabic countries that have, let's say, suffered at our hands over the course of the last 20, 30 years. And so why do we feel that we have any right whatsoever to sort of, complain about their activities in Qatar? And I somewhat agree.
What, you agree that we shouldn't be making such a big deal out of it?
Yeah, and we're perfectly happy to take their liquid natural gas and several other resources that they are more than happy to sell to us. So if we're going to be so high and mighty, we shouldn't actually do any sort of business or have any sort of ties with Qatar at all. But we're happy to take their energy. We're just not happy for them to have a world stand, to have a high standing on the world stage for a couple of weeks. What's the problem?
Well, yeah, look, but the issue I have with it all is kind of, we're and of course I look at it from the angle of saying, okay, there was the thing over the armband, and the England team was going to wear it, and and then it was all stopped because they reckoned they could get yellow cards, which I thought was a bit, how can I put, cowardly. I think we should, if all the teams had done it.
That wasn't a Qatar issue. That was a FIFA issue.
Yes, it was a FIFA issue. You're absolutely right.
That was the governing body that were too. That was the governing body that were too afraid to make a stand. And so, because obviously the Qatari officials said we don't like this, so we're sort of informing you that this isn't going to be allowed. FIFA made a decision. They could have either gone against the Qatari government and had people wear the armbands regardless. What the consequences were, I wouldn't know. Or they took the view that we're going to have to listen to what our paymasters say, and we'll capitulate to everything that they want. Budweiser as well had a huge merchandising deal. What?
Yeah, go on, say again.
What were you saying? I didn't hear that.
I'm sorry. So the reason that that FIFA went down that route was because the head of FIFA perhaps didn't want to end up cut up in lots of little pieces and put in a suitcase.
Well, the fact that he had been paid hundreds of millions of pounds in order to get the games hosted in Qatar. FIFA gets a huge amount of money for doing this. The financial side is huge. And like I was saying with Budweiser very quickly, is that it was agreed prior to the event. So it was agreed prior to the event that Budweiser could have stands around the stadium and within the stadium selling alcohol. 3 days before the start of the game, Qatar decides no alcohol, only alcohol zero is to be allowed, and that there should be no obvious signs of Budweiser, around because it looks bad for our country. So this multi-million pound deal essentially got hacked back because the Qatari authorities were unhappy with having alcohol sales visible to the public, which again goes against. They shouldn't have what?
Should they have agreed to the contract in the first place to take Budweiser's money then? Because ultimately, it seems to me that they've broken their.
Simon, it's like a 12-year deal. It's for this World Cup. It's for European Cups. It's for the next World Cup as well. It's like a $160 million deal or something like that.
Budweiser was involved with FIFA, and FIFA then organise it with Qatar, and it's not directly between Budweiser and Qatar.
Correct. It's all done through FIFA. And FIFA is essentially the most corrupt body on the planet, which we already are aware of. So,
it's fair to look. There's been issues. There's no doubt about it. And I don't know enough to say who's guilty and not guilty and how guilty they are. It would seem to me that it does. There seems as though there's been a lot of mud, and some of it must. There's no smoke without fire, as they always say. But so what you're saying to me is we should be blaming FIFA for the entire fuck up and not Qatar at all, because really, FIFA's kind of gone ahead and accepted money and done deals and what have you on the assumption that Qatar was just going to roll over and open a pub on every segment of the stadiums.
Exactly. FIFA essentially turned a blind eye, assuming that they could probably get away with certain things within their own contracts, which they thought that they could impose on Qatari officials. Qatar essentially went back and said, no chance, because this is our country. We have our own morals, we have our own rules, and you'll follow them or else, essentially. And that's that. And you can't, a commercial contract isn't going to outdo, the country's own laws and requirements. You have to follow the rules of the country where you're in, and that's just it. It really is as simple as that. I don't know why anyone would think things would have gone any other way.
Look, I have to kind of agree with that because, at the end of the day, if it's the rules of a country where alcohol's concerned, then, when in the old adage, when in Rome.
And if you don't like it, don't go. It's as simple as that.
Don't go. Hello.
And
I've said that for a long time.
I wouldn't have gone.
I mean, I wouldn't go on holiday, for example, or go and work in Dubai, not least being gay. I wouldn't want to be chucked off a rooftop.
Hold on, Simon. This is a question then. So this is a question. So Qatar has spent 200 billion on these games, with a view that they want to change the image of Qatar, bring huge amounts of people into Qatar, either on tourism or to bring foreign businesses, into the country to stimulate this sort of second, third wave of growth. After what you've seen, are you going to go to Qatar on holiday? Are you going to move to Qatar as an expat?
Well, I never would anyway, because I know what the country's rules are and what their ethos is, what the culture is. And obviously, from that point of view, it doesn't all sit comfortably with me, whether it's the freedom and rights of women or the way they treat migrant workers or the fact that I'm gay. All of those things were saying, well, okay, maybe it's not the place I should be going to. It's like me choosing to go up to Cumbria because I want a beach holiday. It's just like, well, there's no fucking beach there. Why are you going there? So you don't go to a place, you choose to go to a place based on what that country has to offer and not offer for you personally. And that's not me passing judgment on Qatar. At the end of the day, I think, I would say a lot of their politics and positions are backward. But at the end of the day, that is a matter for them. And maybe one day in 100 years' time, it'll all look very different. Who knows? So maybe we will be ourselves.
So, Simon, using a football reference then, has this been a $200 billion own goal?
Well,
it's got to be one of the most expensive mistakes in history. Because what Qatar were aiming for is way off what the reality is, I think.
Well, I think 200 billion is a massive waste of money. For a sporting event, I just find it kind of a bit ridiculous because it's all over in a couple of weeks. A couple of 3-4 weeks of World Cup. I mean, it's not like having spending 2 billion or 5 billion on a Grand Prix circuit, but then having a Grand Prix there every year. And then kind of getting involved with other things and other races there and getting it, it's a one-trick pony, isn't it? When this is over, it's a bit like the Olympic Stadium down here. They need to repurpose it because it's going to be too damn big for anything. It's just going to be a big 200 billion white elephant, surely.
But it's huge investment outside of just the stadiums as well, though. I mean, they've essentially restructured half of the country to get this done.
Right. So you think it's an own goal?
I think it's a massive own goal. There's so many issues that have cropped up over the past few weeks. So many issues regarding the migrants. So many issues regarding, treatment of tourists, of journalists, so many things that were promised that haven't come to be, a lot of accommodation that essentially turned out to be sort of sheds with a bit of aircon in it, where people were being charged £165 a day for essentially living in a shack in the desert. You get a bed, a metal chair, and an aircon, and that's and you're expected to live. You know, I don't understand. Like, what were these accommodations for? You know, these are, let's call it, relatively wealthy people that are travelling all over the world. You know, that can't afford £1,000 a night in one of their main hotels because that's what they were charging. So the cheapest alternative was £165, but essentially you're living in a shack in the middle of the desert with shared toilets, shared showering facilities, no adequate water supply. It's insane, and this is what they thought people would be happy with.
I saw this on the news. In fact, when I think you're being a bit generous terming them as shacks, because at least shacks are of a material that is breathable. They are actually plastic tents that have no sort of fresh air or breathability. There's no air conditioning. You're absolutely right. It's just, I don't know. I think people in a prison, in a concentration camp, would question whether they'd got the better end of it. It really is, for £150, £160 a night. It's a fucking.
But yet, someone in Qatar,
on the Qatar? That's on FIFA. Yeah. That's on Qatar.
Someone in Qatar essentially suggested that would be suitable for the general public.
Right.
So how do they treat? Imagine what migrants must live in if they deem that acceptable for middle class people. How do they treat the people that are actually building this infrastructure and building these structures?
Well,
it's shocking. It's shocking.
It is shocking. It is shocking, mate. It is shocking.
I'm not going to Qatar on holiday ever.
Well, I wouldn't anyway, because they don't like gay people. You know, and whilst I'm not one of those that sort of minces everywhere, don't say a fucking word here, otherwise I'll be on like a ton of bricks. The fact of the matter is, it wouldn't culturally suit me anyway. But I just find this whole, obviously FIFA's one issue, but I mean the carry on. Don't get me wrong, stopping supporters coming into the stands because they had a rainbow colours in their hat. And if you look at the Welsh supporters' hats, there's actually 3 or 4 colours in it already. So just the addition of a purple and a pink means you can't enter the stadium. Do you want to hear something really funny, though? It's childish.
Do you want to hear something really funny?
Yeah.
Is that they stopped a couple of English supporters going in because they had the Crusader. How do you call it? The chainmail
thing. Oh, right. Oh, really?
It's a little bit insensitive to have a crusader walking through an Arabic state. I mean, it's about the most culturally insensitive thing you could do.
Well, it's 2021 and 22 even. Excuse me if I'm a little bit behind.
But chainmail and a big red cross is not a good look in an Arabic state.
Look, you could argue the same with lots of things that people go, oh, well, I don't really approve of somebody walking around wearing a cross or wearing this, or wearing a particular insignia. As you know, in France, it's illegal to wear religious insignias of any sort anywhere in public. But is it not a little bit sort of grow up and get over yourself a little bit? They said, okay, we might not, there might not be our sort of thing, but if you want to spend 200 billion on getting this kind of World Cup off the ground and creating an image of Qatar or a welcoming image of Qatar, isn't it sort of a bit silly to be starting going, your hat's got too many colours in it, you're not coming in. Isn't it a bit childish? I mean, aren't they kind of lacking something that is saying, well, where does it begin and where does it end? It's like, I'm surprised they don't start looking at it and going, oh, how long is that person's skirt? Can she come in and watch the football? Where do you begin and where do you end? Well, something like this, you've got to be open to your supporters, haven't you?
It comes down to Islamic edicts. Obviously, you have to follow. You have to follow the Islamic rulings, and it does get to that point. You have to be fully covered. That's how you have to, walk around in public. That's the law. That's the rules. You can't have other religious. Not working out. You can't have other outside of Islamic sort of the religion. You can't have other religious artifacts or images around. You can't do that. Again, you have to respect the rules of the country, whether you like it or not. But you should really educate yourself before you go. You need to make some form of judgment, don't you? You have to be like, okay, I understand this is a different culture. Can I live within that culture, even if it's for a week? If I can't, then maybe I should just remove myself from the situation altogether.
But then surely, from the other side,
you can't impose yourself on a culture that isn't your own. I don't think that's right.
No, I don't. But at the same time, if you're spending 200 billion to host a World Cup, then surely for the few weeks that you're hosting that World Cup, you need to be a bit more inclusive about what supporters you allow to come and view the games, and not get so silly over.
Or they should have made a statement right at the beginning. They should be like, if you want to come to this World Cup, these are our conditions. Meet the conditions or don't come. But that wasn't done.
But
that would be the most sensible thing to do.
Fucking hell. The point I'm making, Mel, is that if you spend 200 billion, I mean, am I right in saying that women in Qatar have to wear head coverings? What's the rule for women normal? So if you're hosting a World Cup, they didn't expect all female supporters coming to watch the World Cup to be wearing head coverings, did they?
No. Well, don't quote me on that first of all. I'm not 100% sure.
I think but the point is, if you're going to host a World Cup, then you've got to say, okay, we're not going to get daft over people wearing multicoloured hats or an armband. People have the right. You're inviting visitors, and therefore you're inviting some opinion. Now, I'm not suggesting for one moment that everybody goes on an absolute bender, but or that they should necessarily provide alcohol.
Okay.
What I am
women
saying,
do not have to. Women do not have to. Women do not have to wear head coverings in Qatar. There you go.
Okay, there you go then. So really the issue is over things like alcohol and the fact that they are so anti-gay. I mean, really. And I find that a bit odd,
Yeah, well, you would.
There's historical reputations, you see. But I won't go there. I won't go there because I don't want to find myself, with a contract out on me or anything like that. But I just think it's a bit. It's been a bit overboard against Qatar, because we're quite happy in the matches themselves to play other countries where the politics is questionable. So it's kind of like, well, if you're not happy if you've got all these questions about the host nation, shouldn't you sort of get fussy over which team you'll play?
Yeah, well, that bit I guess is forgotten about, isn't it? But it's more important to win the contest. It doesn't matter anyway because Qatar's out. They lost all 3 games, so that's that. What a success!
Yes, I think isn't that the worst result for a host nation of the World Cup? Pretty well.
It's the first nation to ever lose their first match. I think it is.
Well, I have to say I've not watched any of it, and I find football as dry as a bone. I think I would have watched if just to see the little armbands and to see what kind of how the protests were working. But quite frankly, it's all been overrun by the protests I've been watching in China, which has been far more interesting. So I don't know what you've made of that. As we're talking about protesting, and the opportunity to protest, I suppose. Qatar, this is a World Cup, isn't it? Not that, unlike other World Cups, has seen a lot of protest. It seems any excuse to bring the ag to the World Cup. Whatever your particular issue is.
I think because there's so much corruption, so much, not obvious.
Are you still there?
So much assumed assumption, so much assumed corruption. With Qatar being given the cup, What?
Yeah, go on, carry on.
This is what we agreed, that when the blue light came on, you get your mouth shut.
I've got my mouth shut. I'm trying to get you to talk, but you're gone sticky. Go on, carry on.
I don't remember what I was saying now.
Well, I couldn't hear you. That was the problem. Well, you were saying hear me. About. Pray continue. Continue.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I lost my train of thought, flipping hell. So what's the next topic?
Well, it's not the next topic. This is the topic. We were talking about the protests, a World Cup where lots of protests. It seems like everybody's brought their issue to the table. If that makes sense, whether it's the migrant workers, whether it's the LGBTQ issues, the rights of women. It all seems to have come to a head for this World Cup, and it's kind of made the football a bit secondary, you think?
Well, I agree, but essentially you're talking about issues that the West have. I don't think you find other Arabic countries protesting about these issues because it's not relevant to them. These are issues that are more relevant to the West. And because we have allowed a voice, we're making this opposition, quite loudly. Obviously, we're not happy about the issue of LGBTQ rights. We're not happy about the condition that the migrants have found themselves in. We're not happy with, some of the laws that have been enacted in Qatar and how, they issue certain, what's the best way to say? Anyway, their legal system has somewhat to be desired, at least compared to what we're used to. And I think we just need to be very careful in trying to push our own culture on another society.
Right.
Again, I repeat, it doesn't matter whether you agree or disagree with the way another country operates. It's for you to make a judgment call as to whether you choose to visit the country and abide by their system or not. And ultimately, your choice is go or not go. And it's as simple as that. If there are certain places where you don't feel happy with the culture or how society operates, simply don't go. Don't try to push your own. Don't try to push your own morality on the situation, because I don't think it's right. I don't think it's fair.
Can I hear a baby in the background? Oh, that's your cat. Thank God for that. And I thought, hang on a minute, there's something he's not been telling me. Yeah, you're right. You're right. You can't, at the end of the day, there's lots of places I choose not to go to because I'm not, I've said it to you before. I choose not to go to the USA for much the same reason. There are particular elements to their culture and to the way their society operates that I don't approve of. And therefore,
I choose not to go to Croydon.
To Croydon?
Yeah, for exactly the same reasons.
We'd like to apologise to all our listeners in Croydon. It must be awful for you. What's up with Croydon? What's up with fucking Croydon? Go on, let's do Croydon.
I don't like it. I don't like it.
Go on. I just don't like it. I've never understood.
I've been a couple of times, not a fan. I'm never going back. At least not by choice.
I've been past it on the Gatwick Express and often pondered what they have their own tram system, don't they, in Croydon?
Yeah, they do. Did you know that Croydon is the first council that's declared itself bankrupt 3 times in 2 years? They're under a section something or other notice that the government has to bail them out because they're 300 million something in the hole.
Hang on a minute. So if you're bankrupt 2 years ago, right, how is it that you can manage to bankrupt yourself a further 2 times in such a short space of time? I mean, because surely if you're bankrupt...
Because they get bailed out and then they misuse the money and then they get bailed out again. They misuse the money. They get bailed out for a 3rd time. It's insane. It's absolutely insane, but it's completely off topic. But they...
Well, it's not really, is it? There I see my colleague Mal, if you can hear this list, has the noisiest cat on the planet, we've discovered. Who obviously, if she's not getting an appropriate amount of attention, will in a moment, having been ignored, making a lot of noise, will appear on camera and closer to the microphone. Is there any chance of this happening? He's standing by the door,
but I can't. He's standing by the door, but I can't get up and open the door to let him out.
You can't get up and open the door. Well, I opened the door to some plonker that wanted to have a fight with me a few weeks ago, if you remember. So you're perfectly at liberty to get up and open the front door and let her out if you wish. I'm sure I can entertain the viewers.
That's all right. When we wrap up, I'll open the door.
Oh, right, okay. She's not going to piss on your flooring or claw the door down to the hinges.
No, he's good. He's coming. He's coming over.
Oh, I told you. See, I know how cats work. I've had many a moggy. I know how they are. I used to have one that if I didn't give it the appropriate amount of attention, bless. She's camera shy. She's not looking at the camera, is she?
Number one, it's a boy.
It's a boy. It's a boy. Has it had its nuts off?
Yes, it has.
So it's a transgender cat.
No, it's not a transgender cat. It's a castrated cat.
Eh?
It's a castrated cat.
It's a what?
It's a castrated
cat.
There is a difference between being castrated and being transgender.
Yes,
isn't there, Simon?
There is. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I've neither been castrated or changed gender, but I can imagine castration is a bit, how can I say, uncomfortable.
Probably.
And presents all sorts of issues with your Y-fronts, I assume, as well. But they're not that cats wear Y-fronts, but but there you are. So, back to this thing. So we think, really, we're being a bit hard on Qatar for over the issue of the World Cup. Or do you think we're not being hard enough and we shouldn't have gone there in the first place and just gone, hang this, we don't approve of this thing, So we're not sending our team there. Because isn't that what normally happens when we disapprove of a country and they're hosting a big event? We go, no, we're not coming.
If we had any real balls, that's exactly what would have happened. You'd have had countries that would have simply chosen not to participate. But because there's so much money in it, that was never going to happen. And that's the reality of it. So if we had any real balls, we would have said, thank you, but no thank you. We'll wait until the next one. But that wasn't, not in a million years was that going to happen. And that's the truth.
So the England team has got less donuts than your cat.
Exactly.
Essentially. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's no good.
Or they would have worn the rainbow band and taken the yellow cards.
I agree with you. It
might not have helped their cause on the pitch, but it would have made a stand. But they chose not to. It's a choice. They could have either chosen to go ahead and, like rules to the wind. We're going to do it anyway to make a point, to make a stand. Yeah. But they were like, well, actually, no, we'd rather win the World Cup. So there you go.
If a lot of teams that have adopted that approach and all worn the armband, I know Germany had their own little protest with the hands over the mouths and whatever, but if they'd all adopted the same and stuck two fingers up to FIFA, they'd have had no World Cup, because they wouldn't have handed out the yellow cards, because they'd be like, hang on a minute, we're going to turn this into a shit show, and FIFA would have had to have climbed down off the yellow card issue.
Exactly. If everyone would have taken if everyone would have taken a unilateral stand, there was bugger all FIFA would have been able to do about it. I agree with you 100% on that one.
Instead of which, you had certain players from certain teams wearing cheeky little, I don't know, rainbow socks or a rainbow insignia on their football boot. All sorts of little kind of more nuanced things to make their point. But it just seems to me that it's like, somebody should have said, fuck off, FIFA. We're all these teams are going to wear the armband. What are you going to do? You're going to send this all off? Fuck you. And they would have climbed down. But, I just think that surely before you even consider sending your team in the first place, you look at the whole thing and go, well, we're happy to send our team to that place because of X and Y happening. A bit like what happened in South Africa before apartheid came to an end. We actually started to look at it. An England cricket team, I believe, didn't they? I might be wrong. Check your history, folks. But didn't they boycott playing the South African team for that very reason? Didn't we get into a kind of thing that kind of said, okay, no, we're not willing to play?
Not a clue, because I don't understand cricket, but you're probably right. And the apartheid movement was incredibly strong. The anti-apartheid movement was huge. And it made a change. But everyone stood together for the most part.
Yeah, and they didn't send teams and they didn't take part in things. Yet we've waited until we've got there. I mean, I think the biggest issue I've got is somebody like David Beckham taking money. I mean, like he needs to earn another 150 million quid over the next 10 years.
Plus 20,000 nights for his hotel room, by the way.
Hey? What?
Plus 20,000 pounds. £20,000 a night for his hotel room in Qatar, by the way, paid for.
Wow! I mean, have you seen the video of David Beckham and his promotional video for Qatar for the World Cup? Or for Qatar?
No, but the hypocrisy is insane. But he's not smart. He's not exactly very smart up here anyway. So there you go.
Oof, crikey, man! It is the worst promotional video. It is rubbish. Rubbish. I wouldn't have given you tuppence, never mind 150 million quid and a 20 grand a night hotel room. It's absolute pants. But you'd have thought somebody like Beckham would have gone, well, I can't really take your money for this because, I don't really agree with how your country operates. Hey. So actually, no, I won't promote you. I'll do it for, somewhere else instead.
But he'd rather take the money from you. There you go.
Which he doesn't. which he really, frankly, shouldn't need, should he? I mean,
well, yeah, he does. He has to prop up his wife's. He has to prop up his wife's fashion empire that's collapsing. That costs quite a few £1 million a year just to keep the thing afloat. So
well,
every penny counts.
Fucking close it. It's rubbish anyway, isn't it? I can't stand the. Sorry for all of those that think they're wonderful. I can't stand the Beckhams. I can't stick them. You know what I mean? I don't know what the fascination is with that squeaky voiced little pillock.
You said it, not me.
Than he does. I'm not saying something. Eh? Any comment?
No.
Any comment? No comment?
No comment.
So where we are, well, there we have it, really. So it's not really 100% Qatar's fault. We shouldn't have agreed to it in the first place before getting all antsy. And some of it's down to FIFA not really having organised it very well in the first place. I mean, you know, and who wants to watch the World Cup 3 weeks from Christmas, 4 weeks from Christmas? I mean, isn't there something kind of a bit bizarre about that? You know, is it getting the same viewing numbers?
On that note, let's say goodbye.
Well, I think that's it. We've kind of wound it up. Sod the World Cup. Enjoy it if you enjoy it. Get pissed if you want, but on your own head. Be it. Yeah. So, on that note, I guess, yeah, I'm going to give you a quick call on the phone when we finish. You know, unless you want to carry on there.
No. All right, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for watching and subscribe to the channel, please.
Enjoy the penalty shootout that England...